I'm super excited to host Ari Baranian, CEO and co-founder of Pirros, database for construction details platform. Thanks a lot for being on the show, Ari.
Excited to be here. Thanks, Mayor.
Yeah. So, Ari, you come from a domain background. I see, like you were a structural design engineer then you became a founder. So, can you walk us through, like, from after college till this date, what would be your two or three major career highlights?
Yeah, so I went to school for structural engineering. I went to University of Michigan. And then while there, I ended up doing a minor in computer science as well, just because I got really interested in it and got interested in programming and technology, but wanted to work in structural engineering. So I went and worked at a big structural engineering firm in LA, and then started an in-house software development team in that company with the goal of developing internal tools to make the structural engineering practice more efficient. Things like data extraction out of analysis software, as well as like parametric design, computational design, things like that. After doing that for a few years, then came across kind of the idea and the problem around detail management and wanted to start a company to solve that with a friend of mine, Peter, who was also a coworker, a structural engineer at KPFF. So that all kind of came together well, and then we left our roles, started Piros, got into YC pretty quickly after that, and then have continued to grow ever since.
That's like I have so many questions around that. I think one of the thing I've seen is quite challenging uh, is to when people are developing internal digital innovation team, finding ROI generating products, or even enabling and finding the right skill sets and training to make those tools. So can you share, like, from an experience what you learned during that time?
Yeah, I mean, I was fortunate in that the company that I worked for was very willing to invest in digital solutions and software development because they understood and believed that small improvements are have massive ROI. And so some of the very, very simple tools that I built for them, things that took like 1 day or 2 days to build, ended up paying off like tens of hundreds of X the investment. Um, and so it's not very hard to find ROI in our industry where like a lot of the tools are antiquated and old school. But it is hard to create those improvements. Like you just need to invest first before you'll finally see the outcome.
I see. And from your structural engineering journey, there's so many, like, unsolved problems till date, and there's so many potential opportunity of innovation. Any ideas which you'd like to see more solution in the structural design automations?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's exciting, like the structural engineering industry and the architecture industry as well. Both just don't have a lot of tooling. If you think about like the biggest companies in the space, it's pretty much just Autodesk as like a publicly traded company. And then maybe Bluebeam and Dell Tech are the other couple big ones. Um, but yeah, there's so much opportunity. I think like from a structural engineering perspective, things to automate like model, like an analytical model to design model and like fabrication model tooling is a huge opportunity. I know a couple companies have built some in-house tooling to go from Revit to like ETABS or RISA really well, but that's not mainstream by any means. And I mean, ideally, like Revit and CSI would just intercooperate better, but that's not necessarily in their business interests either. So.
I see. Ari, can you share, like, the early days of Piros, how you came up with the idea, like, and how
Yeah,
much time
so
did it take?
yeah, the idea was something that we kind of came up with while we were at KPFF, something that we heard from others. It wasn't necessarily like a very novel idea that we came up with. It was something that we would continuously hear as like, why can't I just go and like search through all of the details that have ever been done on old projects and stuff? So that's where it all began. Then the first like 2, 3 months was just me and Peter, my co-founder, like in a living or in a bedroom. Like I was coding away. He was doing a lot of like marketing and sales kind of operational stuff. And then once we got into YC, it took us about 3 months. Yeah, I think it was about 3 to 4 months after starting the company to get into YC and get our first customer. It was actually, like, the same day that we got YC and our first customer. And then for another, like, 6 to 8 months after that, it was still just the 2 of us. Like, I would do everything technical and customer oriented. He would do everything, like, sales and go-to-market oriented. And so after we would get a new customer, they would get passed on to me, and I would set them up, onboard them, like, take their feature requests, build new things for them, and so on. And then from there, now we're a team of 11 people. We have an engineering team, we have a sales team, customer success team, um, and everything is just continuing to scale up and grow from there.
Yes. Any surprises or things you didn't expect, like when you build the POC or MVP versus the product in this stage?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, there's so many things that I didn't expect, but now in hindsight, it should have been obvious. Like, we thought that every company would operate the same way. Like, okay, they go and they get details from like a PDF file or something. Every company operates completely differently. And so building a product for like 100 companies looks very different than when we were building a product for like the 3 companies that we had any awareness of. So that's like continuous learning. And even today, like we meet new companies and new ways of doing things, and then find ways where our product does just scale and fit in, and other ways where it needs to adapt and needs to change to fit other workflows. But in hindsight, that should have been obvious. Of course, every company does things differently. But at the time, we thought it's just architecture, it's just engineering, it's the same product.
I see. Any tips? So you learned through the computer science minor, and you were learning coding and everything by yourself. Any tips for building MVP? Like how can one learn the necessary skills for that?
Yeah, I think learning the necessary skills is something that, I mean, we're fortunate there's so much like resources and opportunity. I did like 3 or 4 classes of computer science in my undergrad. So that's not enough to like build a company or to build a product. That just gives you some theoretical background. And then after that, everything was self-taught. I took a lot of like online classes um, that taught me different technologies, like web technologies, database technologies, and whatnot. And really it just came down to like the passion. Like I cared a lot about learning those things and I enjoy learning. And then applying that learning, those learnings to helping the people in our industry. And like a lot of our users are my old friends, like people that I used to work with are now like users of our product. So it's great to see that kind of stuff. And it is motivating to be able to continue to learn to help them.
Okay. And you might have shared about this insight already, like your first few customers through the relationship from the old firms and your friends. But any tips for people who are building product to find first 10 customers in AEC if they're serving? Like, what's the
Yeah.
distribution strategy?
So it's interesting because everyone assumes that our first, like, 10 customers were all just our friends and stuff. Our first customer was somewhat relationship based. Our second customer was just a structural engineering firm that we had heard about, but we didn't know anyone there. We just reached out cold and started a conversation. Really, it just came down to effort. We spent a lot of time just like learning how to properly like do outbound, properly reach out to people, properly like use LinkedIn and network and so on. Um, and it was all things that we had never done before. Like me nor Peter were ever in sales, so we didn't know how to do this kind of stuff. But again, so many resources that you can learn from, and we just spent the time to learn it and then execute it. And what we were doing at that time looks completely different to what we're doing today. But if we were to do it again today, I think like the optimal is those things that don't scale, like just reaching out like manually with emails. Like now we have systems, but those systems wouldn't have made sense at that time. We would have spent more time building systems than just doing the work.
Nice. Any learnings from the pricing, setting the pricing for the product?
Yeah, I mean, pricing is very difficult. Like inherently, for some people, it's going to be way overpriced. For other people, it's going to be way too cheap. And so, as a company, you're trying to make sure that you're giving the customer way more value than you are pricing, and so convincing them of that ROI and stuff. And like that ROI has to be real. It's not just about convincing them. So that's essentially where we started was just we did a calculation of, well, how much time does it take to find a detail from an old project? What is the hourly rate of an average engineer or an average architect? And if you are finding 10 details a week or whatever like the numbers may be, suddenly that amplifies out to massive amounts of cost that the companies are taking. And then we just divided that by 10. Essentially, we estimated what the value we would provide would be, and then divided that by 10. And we thought that would be a fair price for people to pay.
Got it. I want to know more about like your YC experience. Like it's you meet a lot of ambitious founders, and everyone has such a like people are building like generation defining or decade defining products. So can you share that?
Yeah, I mean, YC was a great experience for us. It was interesting because before getting into YC or before like when we were thinking about applying, one of the things that we heard like the YC network is kind of the most valuable part of being in YC. And we discounted that because we are like, well, we're not going to get any customers from YC. We don't get to show up and just get like 20 customers the same way like a dev tool would. And so we thought that wouldn't actually be valuable. It turns out it was still like the most valuable part is like that network of other founders and people at similar stages. And so now with that, we are able to reach out to people who might be like 2 or 3 years further along in the journey and have solved some of the problems we're facing today. And we also have like a cohort of people at our exact level and our exact stage that we are facing the same problems at the same time. And so we're able to work through them kind of together and hear how they've seen it, how we've seen it, and so on. So that network is definitely like probably the most valuable thing is now we have all these other founder friends who can help us solve problems or give us advice or so on. And certainly you meet incredible people, like people way further along in the journey who have built amazing, amazing companies like the Retool, Airbnb, Reddit, so on, Coinbase. Yeah, I mean, amazing experience. I would recommend it to anyone. Um, Obviously, there's like the equity that they will take and like the investment that they will give you, but that's not really the value. It's that organization and community that you're in.
What's the best piece of advice you have received?
I mean, I think YC is like whole thing is just to stay really close to the customer and not like become just like a higher level like manager type of person. You want to still be in the weeds of what's going on, and that means both like your customers, like as things change, you have to be very aware of what like the industry as the industry is changing, and then also like internally in your own team, like very aware of all the processes and practices that your team is doing, such that things don't kind of get out of hand or go down a path that was unintentional.
I see. Let's do a bit deep dive into Pirros. I'll share the screen so we can walk
Sure.
us through various features.
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, Pirros is a detail management system. So the initial like value prop and the initial motivation was always just that people are inherently going to past projects frequently to pull old details. Something we would do, something all of our friends would do is, oh, I'm working on a hospital project today. I know that I worked on a similar hospital project 3 years ago. Let me just go and pull out a couple of the details from that project. But that's easier said than done. Just going and doing that, you have to go and find the project number, find the folder, find the latest model. Most likely you have to upgrade that model, and that's going to take 20, 30 minutes. And so by the time you've pulled out one detail, it spent like 45 minutes or an hour to do that. And that's even in the case where you knew exactly what you needed and knew exactly what project it came from. Now there's all the cases where you don't know exactly what you're looking for. Those people don't even like try really. Sometimes you might ask your friends and try to get a head start on it, but most of the time you just create it from scratch. You make some new mistakes. You have to review it with your project manager. All of that is what prompted this idea of being able to centralize all of your details from the company into one library such that everyone in your company can search through them. And of course, we differentiate like the typical, the standard, the vetted, like the really good details are in a separate section. Those are held to a higher standard. Those are things that people can use freely and um, like know are going to be really good. But then there are the other section of details, which is just an old project. use at your own risk. There might be specific things in here that you have to change, but at least now you have a starting point that you can use and pull from, and then expedite your design process.
See, we have Daniel, who is
Yeah,
customer. Thanks for joining. Yeah,
thanks, Dan. Yeah, appreciate it.
yeah. Can you share like what were the technical challenges while building this product?
Yeah, I mean, it's yeah, the biggest technical challenge by far is having to integrate with Revit. So every one of our customers is using a different Revit version. They have different plugins installed. Different plugins kind of um, conflict with each other. And so sometimes we will sign up a new customer, and when they install the Pirros plugin, it will just conflict with an existing plugin, and now both plugins don't work. And now we have to reach out to that plugin developer and ask them if they can make a change, if we can make a change to make them work together better. That's for sure been one of the largest, like, technical challenges. There's a lot of other, like, technical, like, achievements and accomplishments behind the scenes in Piros where we do, like, duplicate detection of details and things like that, and those were challenges in their own right, but those were, like, challenges that we instilled on ourselves, whereas, like, integrating with Revit was, like, a table stakes thing. We would not have a business if we did not have a way to move details from Revit uh, to Revit and from Revit, like back and forth. And so that interoperability is like a must have, and it's been way more challenging than we would have expected.
I see. And what's on your like roadmap? What for 2025? What's coming next?
Yeah, I mean, right now we're super intrigued and interested in making sure that the Piros ecosystem can help you with like your past projects, finding all the information from your past projects and making sure that it centralizes a lot of that information. So companies have data about their previous projects in like 10 different places. So we want to be able to pull that data in so that you come to Piros looking for old details, but also potentially old like files and photographs, old like calculation packages for structural engineers or specs for architects, things like that. So continuing to build out the kinds of information that is stored on Piros because we already have like your project inside of Piros. Now, what other information can you put into Piros about that project?
I see. Interesting. What are some common concerns or friction firms have before adopting Puros?
Yeah, I think the biggest concern, like common concern, and this is very valid and like acceptable kind of industry wide, is just an adoption risk. So since the architecture and engineering industry doesn't have 100 different SaaS tools that everyone is using every day, it's not as easy to get a new tool in the door and a new tool adopted by all of your customer or all of your users. And that is something that is like the biggest hesitation is what if it doesn't get adopted and we buy this new tool that nobody uses? And that's equally like a concern for us and a risk for us is that we don't want to sell you a tool if you're not going to get the value out of it. And so we invest a lot in our customer success team and customer success motion, such that once signing up with Piros, you get a dedicated account manager, customer success manager, who is going to walk you through all of your onboarding. She's going to host the training with you, and then they're going to make sure that they track all your analytics such that you will know you're getting the value out of it. And anytime there's like subgroups in your office who aren't using the tool yet, then you can get that information, you can reach out to them, you can do another training and exercise with them such that everyone is aware and there's really good awareness and adoption. By far, that's like the biggest hesitation, the biggest challenge that we like invest heavily in fixing.
I see. Are there any like questions related to like client confidential information around that, mm, or
Yeah, I
privacy?
mean, so there's certainly like government work usually just does not go onto Puros. I know government projects have a lot of requirements around not even using like any cloud sites at all. And so everything has to be in a controlled server, controlled environment. And so that's something that certainly comes up and is like acceptable. We do not have FedRAMP at this time, so we can't accommodate those kinds of government things. We do have other security certifications and stuff. So our environment is very secure and our customers' data retains only their data. It doesn't become Pirros data. No AI models or anything are being trained on it. It's still all the customer's information. We are just giving you a portal to access your own information and a better interface to be able to organize that information.
Got it. Is there anything in terms of features wise or case studies wise would you'd like to share on the website?
If you want to go into features, we can kind of talk through a couple of the things that are listed there. I mean, I think the biggest like value other than the things that we've said, being able to find an old detail, search through an old detail, is that you can create this library very, very quickly. So the way that it works is when you get started with Piros, you just drag and drop your old models in. And if you're using ACC or BIM 360, you can actually just pick from your ACC projects list or BIM 360 project list, and it's going to create the library for you automatically. You just pick those models, it will ingest all the details out of those models. And so within like the first day of having Piros, you can have a library of 10,000 plus details just by clicking a lot of old projects and then ingesting those details. Now, the concern that some people would then have is, well, those 30 projects that I upload all have the same foundation detail or the exterior like parapet detail or so on. That's true. They will all have the same detail, but Pyros is really smart in that it's able to go and collab like collate those details and deduplicate those details such that they're kind of stacked on top of each other. So when you search for a matte foundation, for example, you don't see 30 different matte foundation details. You see one matte foundation detail with like a toggle that says, "Oh, I found 30 other versions of this."
Mm,
So it's able to identify when details are very similar, group them together so that you're not searching through a lot of noise. And then if you want slightly different versions of one detail, it shows you, well, here are all the other versions of that as well.
I see. And I guess that's also ties like some data analytics, like how many are the repeating details.
Exactly, yeah. And since we're able to have that data, we can help you create your standard detail, like vetted detail library quickly as well. We're analyzing of those 10,000 details. I noticed that this map foundation showed up 10 times or 20 times, but it doesn't yet exist in your standard library, your typical detail library. We notify you of that. And so you can go in and add that detail to your standards library. You can make those changes there, um, like to make it more generic and standard, and then upload it as a separate, like vetted detail inside of the Pyros platform.
I see. And
I think
can
the one other kind of big thing that I want to touch on too is a lot of the value here comes from being able to search and like reference old work. So of course the Revit integration is a big part of us back into Revit, but a lot of our users are not Revit savvy or Revit users. They are engineers or architects, maybe more senior in their career, such that they don't open Revit models anymore. They just work in Bluebeam and PDFs. And so you're able to search inside of Pyros, find details, and then just download them as a PDF and start marking them up directly as a PDF file. So you can, as a senior architect, senior engineer, you can go and build out like a collection of the details that you want to use on your project, download them as PDF, mark them up, and then just hand them off to whoever is working on that project in Revit. And then that person has everything, all the data and linked up. So they just click a button and it all gets downloaded direct into their model. And they go and take on those markups that your senior architect project manager made for you. So Pyros was intentionally designed with both kind of parties in mind, both the really heavy Revit users and design technology kind of people, as well as the people who are not as tech savvy, who are just using Bluebeam and markups and so on. You still go on Pyros. It's just a web application. You don't even need Revit downloaded. So you use the web application, you search for a detail, download it as a PDF, and start marking it up in Bluebeam.
yeah, it makes it super accessible across various people with different software skill set.
Exactly, exactly.
I see. Uh, what is I think you might have already covered. What is one feature customer love the most?
It's just a search. Yeah, like how easy it is to find a old detail. That same example that I was explaining where I know I need a matte foundation detail for a hospital from a couple years ago, It would have taken me like 45 minutes to go and open that model and find it and whatnot. Now in Pirros, it takes literally like 1 minute to find it and download it. That is like the wow factor. That is the thing that every customer kind of loves, can't really live without. Everything else becomes additional and reinforces that. But the whole goal of Pirros is being able to find what you need really quickly and then use it and action on it really quickly.
Yes. With this like Gen AI agents where is Peter's cooking something on those lines?
Yeah, so we are exploring. We have some like preliminary AI features and stuff around some of that deduplication, things like that that I was mentioning. But in terms of like Gen AI, that's something that we have started exploring. We're not like committing super heavily to it at this time, just because we don't necessarily think the technology is quite there yet. If you've seen like the mid journeys and like the Gen AI like picture models, like image models, they're still not perfect. They still mess things up, and construction drawings and documents kind of need to be perfect. It's like a life safety like hazard. And so there's no room for error in that. So the models have to be at a higher level of quality um, for that to happen. But it's on our radar. It's something we're exploring.
I see. And for example, one detail might have like a systems of materials and it could be an assembly. So if I search a detail through roof, or I can search like for example a particular insulation in a roof detail, like what are the
Yeah.
metadata one could search, or what are you
Yeah.
expecting?
I mean, we have people who search down to like the specific product. So I know for sure on this project I'm working with so and so subcontractor and they want to use this like insulation product. You can search that product's like SKU or like name or whatever, and as long as that product was called out in the detail somewhere, it will be found. So Pirros is searching through as much information as is available to it through like the Revit model, and those are things like the sheet name that it came from, the view name, the detail name, all of the tags and stuff inside of the detail. All of that is getting searched as well. So you should definitely be able to find what you're looking for, and the beauty of it is, like, if you search once and you don't find what you need, it's just like Google. You just change your keywords a little bit and you find it on your second search or third search. It takes an extra like 2 seconds to change your search. It's not a burdensome thing.
Got it. And can one do like filter, give me all the details with insulation greater than 150 or something?
Yeah, so we can do filtering. You can filter down to different like project types, for example. Like let me look for all of the hospital projects we've worked on in the West Coast region. You can use those filters, and now you're searching through all the details that are hospital details in the West Coast. And then also you can filter down to individual detail levels. So if you go and you add tags to your details to say like, here are all of my roof details, you can click roof and just filter down to all the roof details in your standard detail library typically. And so
I
with that, you could filter down to like details that are roof and steel, like steel roof details or so on.
see. And the tagging is can be done in Revit as well as the web platform. Or
Correct. Yeah. So it can be done in the web platform after things have been uploaded to Piros, or if in your Revit model you already have like parameters, like shared parameters, custom parameters, those can all be imported in as well. And so all of those parameters you have in Revit can be imported in as tags inside of Piros.
amazing. Like I love the product you have built. How can digital innovation managers, BIM managers, or techies support Pirros? Like
Yes, I mean, if anyone is interested in learning more, feel free on our website. There's a book demo link or form. There's also a little chat messenger. Either of those ways will get you in touch with our team here, and someone will get back to you quickly. In terms of our current customers, like Dan's been super supportive, giving us introductions to other people in their network, um, just spreading the word about Pyros essentially to make sure that everyone knows about it, and at least like if a company is in an initiative where they are updating their detail library or want to make detailing more efficient, then it makes sense to at least review Pyros and see if it will fit your workflows.
got it. I have a rapid fire round, and You
Sure.
just have like 5 to 10 seconds to answer, and you have to make it super brief. Okay.
Sure.
So, who's your structural engineering role model?
Oh, I mean, I had a lot of great professors at Berkeley that I looked up to a lot. One of them was Philippou, and then another was Jack Maley.
Uh, Your favorite structural design? It could be a building, stadiums, anything.
Yeah, the one that stuck out with me is what the Salesforce Tower was supposed to be. It was SOM's proposal for it, and it didn't win the proposal, but I've seen the model of that building. It's amazing.
I see. Any book that made a big impact in your life?
Um, yeah, The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz. That was a big one.
I see. Your favorite movie?
Um, Growing up, I watched Gladiator a lot, and I just watched Gladiator 2. So,
I see. Three words your friends would describe you as.
um, probably ambitious, uh, hardworking, and driven.
I see. Advice to 18-year-old Harry.
Um, I mean, I have no regrets. I wouldn't change anything. Um, 18-year-old Ari didn't necessarily work as hard as I do currently, so probably just to work harder and like dive in deeper into the things that I'm passionate about.
Any mentors you want to give a shout out?
A lot of our angel investors have helped us a lot. So there's like the former CEO of Autodesk, Carl Bass, has helped us a lot. Some of the founders of PlanGrid, like Ryan Sutton G and Tracy Young, they've helped us a lot, as well as a few others like Tim. Um, Tim and Vlad have helped us a lot from Watchpoint as well.
Yeah. Uh, any city which is in your travel bucket list?
I was supposed to do like a 30 cities in Europe trip that I never got the chance to do.
Oh,
So just I want to go to Greece really bad, and I want to go to Prague really bad.
yes. Your proudest moment in the startup?
Proudest moment in the startup is probably getting into YC.
I see. Uh, on a concluding note, anything which we didn't cover in this interview and would like to share?
Um, I don't think so. I think we went through kind of everything on both like the founder journey, like the company journey, as well as like the product and Pirros as well. So really appreciate it.
Amazing. It was lovely hosting you, Ari. Looking forward to the next progress of Pirros, and thanks for your time.